Welcome, everyone. I'm Joyce Klein. I'm Director of the Business Ownership Initiative at the Aspen Institute, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to the second set of learning events for the MasterCard Center for Inclusive Growth's Financial Security Grantee Learning Community. The purpose of this community is to help support and strengthen the work of the Center's financial security grantees by providing you with opportunities to learn from and with each other. And in our first set of events, which we did earlier this year, we learned about and shared experiences regarding digital payment initiatives. So today we're embarking on our second set of events, which focus on digital training, or sort of on digital training. We'll get more into that in a minute. We have team members from Arifu and from TechnoServe who are here to share their experiences and lessons with developing, prototyping, and scaling the use of digital tools to provide information and support knowledge building and behavior change among entrepreneurs and small enterprise owners. And I'm pleased to introduce our panelists today. From Arifu, we are joined by Mirza Conway, who's co-founder and joint learning officer, and also Usman Ziki, who is director of research and impact. And from TechnoServe, we're joined by Juan Carlos Thomas, who's the global entrepreneurship director at TechnoServe, and Julian Wassenaar, who is Director of Strategic Initiatives. So thanks everyone for being with us today. Wanted to share a little bit on why we invited these two organizations to be with us today. And it's the case for a couple of reasons. One is that both organizations started their work to develop and use digital tools well before the pandemic, although I think probably the pandemic has accelerated the pace of some of that. They have experience in using a wide range of digital tools, from SMS chatbot to video to webinars, WhatsApp, telephones. They also have experience in applying these tools in a variety of places, multiple countries and continents, and with very diverse sets of users. And finally, they've evaluated and reflected on and shared publicly about some of the lessons they learned in the process. So we thought they were two great organizations to kick off our conversation. So again, thanks to all of you for joining us. And we thought we would start the conversation by talking about the why of digitizing. So each of you, I think, started your digital work maybe in the early 2010s. Is that correct? You want to nod your heads? So what was the motivation for taking a digital approach or starting to integrate digital tools? And Juan Carlos, want to start with you. Tell us a little bit about your mission, TechnoServe. Let me get the mission out there, to connect hardworking people in developing countries to information and market opportunities. And you had, I think, been working for decades to do some training and work with entrepreneurs in person. Tell us more about your work and why you decided to go down the digital path.
Well, Joyce, thank you so much for the invite and the opportunity to share our learnings in this pretty exciting journey. As you mentioned, TechnoServe is a global NGO that supports entrepreneurial women and men in developing countries. We have been around for over 50 years, and we're proud that last year, our work, mostly in Africa, Latin America, and in India, benefit more than 300,000 men and women. But that figure impressed me. I guess it's impressive in itself, but it's just a drop in the ocean. So at the end of the day, the name of the game is how you scale to millions, hundreds of millions of people that need to build skills, networks, access to funding to improve their lives, the lives of their families, their communities. And we saw in technology a very exciting opportunity to help us scale. And this can be accomplished at least in three ways. One is by reducing cost. The cost of building the skills, generating that impact, generating that connection through digital media, when it's possible, when it's done successfully, is way lower than when done in face-to-face, in-person interactions. It can also help us increase the reach. So historically, our programs have been based on human interaction needs to be in a certain geographical area where we can have the skill to have a team in place, for example. With digital media, you can start thinking in reaching people that has a connection but may not have a role, or that is you can create a hub in a country of business advisors, for example, that can support entrepreneurs across different cities, towns, even beyond their own country if they speak the same language. It also helps us learn more and become more effective. So we are an organization that is highly committed to measuring and learning. But when you do programs in the traditional way, I will say, the learning process takes months. And the data is limited to what you can physically collect in person, in interviews, in visits, etc. With digital media, the amount of information you get is just massive, and it's immediate. Did people like the video or not? Did it watch it or not? In which minute they drop? In which minute they pause it? That give you insights on how you can improve things and make them way more effective. So we're very excited by this opportunity that started almost 10 years ago, at least more consistently for us, and we're doing. We are highly committed now to keep learning and developing tools to scale. So and that's getting a lot of traction from our teams on the ground, from the entrepreneurs that we assist, but also from our partners. I think Julian want to build on that as well.
That's a great comment, Juan Carlos. I think that especially amongst our corporate partners, there is a lot of interest in broadening the reach of these programs, like Juan Carlos was mentioning. And so a digital program enables us to build capacities both in other places where we might not have been able to before, such as like a middle income country that a corporation is looking to increase their impact, or also into other segments of the entrepreneurship profile, segments that have higher levels of digital literacy, numeracy, and access to technology. And so this enables us really to get much broader scale than we would be able to with an in-person program.
Thank you, Julian. So Marissa, I think you're going to answer on behalf of Arifu, and what's interesting, what's different is that you started with digital as an organization, but I'm guessing some of the motivations were the same as what we heard from Juan Carlos.
Yeah, that's right. So we started digital. Our initial goal was the mission of the organization is to put information and opportunity in reach of everybody. And we saw a digital solution as the way to be able to scale. We also, we're kind of reflecting on the environment where there's a lot of organizations that spend a lot of time creating trainings and information based on research that they're doing. And once the projects are done, the information is no longer available past that. So what we wanted to do is leverage by working with partners who already have done a lot of work to create in-person trainings or manuals and see how we could digitize that and scale its access to more individuals. We work a lot with really low-income, underserved individuals. So we wanted to start first by partnering with high impact partners, really selecting those partners who we think are having a good impact. So we've partnered with TechnoServe before, we've partnered with MasterCard Center for Inclusive Growth before. And the idea was, how can we leverage what they already know to design digital trainings that would be able to reach audiences through that channel, and really understanding how do you design for digital. We started with SMS because it's a technology that everybody has on their phone. It doesn't require you to have a smartphone. It doesn't require you to have data. And we mimicked the technologies that already had widespread adoption. So like M-Pesa and other mobile money channels in Kenya, where we started, had really taken off. So we designed the experience to feel very much like them. so that there wasn't a lot of access barriers, right? And they could just engage with the information. We also work with partners to make it 100% free so that there wasn't that cost barrier to the content. And now, realizing that SMS isn't for everybody. There's going to be audiences that want to interact with rich media, videos, and images. And so we're now available on WhatsApp, Facebook, Facebook Messenger, Telegram. And because we now want to reach also those audiences that will be low to no literacy, working to build IVR capabilities. And so far we've worked with over 40 partners to reach about 1.5 million learners and growing. So it's been very exciting so far, but yeah, that was our approach.
Great. Thank you. So I think one of the things that's valuable from your peers who are also, for your peers to hear, that are also thinking about digital content is what's a lesson that they can apply to their own work. So almost a decade in for both of you, what's something you've learned through that work that you wish you knew at the beginning of the process because it would have made things a whole lot easier? Or what's something based on that, a piece of advice that you might give to someone else who's going down the digital road? And Juan Carlos, start with you.
So great question, Joyce. Well, the whole process has been a discovery for us. As you know, our approach is to go beyond training and to actually prompt behavioral changes among the entrepreneurs we work with. So this is not about teaching marketing or finance or operations. This is about helping entrepreneurs become better leaders and better managers of their businesses by learning, adopting, and adapting new skills. And that's pretty much still an uncharted territory in entrepreneurship development through digital media. That whole process, how you prompt those, how you find entrepreneurs at the right moment and in the right digital place. How do you replicate the relationships, the trust that we need to create? And that is highly relevant to support entrepreneurs. How do you recreate that in the digital space? That has been a huge learning for us. And I encourage everyone to pay attention to it and to measure and to continuously learn and refine the approach to, if that's what you want to accomplish.
Thank you. We're going to unpack this a little bit more later. We'll talk a little bit more about that. Marissa, do you have a big takeaway that you would share with folks based on your decade of experience?
Absolutely. Yeah. So, it's easy to say that we want to put information and opportunity in reach of everyone, but what does that mean? How do we achieve that? There's different segments of individuals and they have different content needs and they need that delivered in a different way to really fit into their lives. And so we started with this very project-based approach where we would start partnering with an organization and understand our organization's objectives, and then through human-centered design research, meet with experts and members of the target audience to really understand, what are their goals and what type of information do they need to reach those goals. And that approach works really great to contextualize and personalize content for that project. But if we want to scale that to meet just-in-time information for people's needs when they have a challenge, we need to grow faster. And so right now we're really focusing on our efforts on how do we, one, understand those different target audiences better through research that's focused on what do women, what do they need to know in different locations and how best to deliver the information to them as an example. And then also in building a platform where we can invite other experts to come in and create content alongside us and deliver that content. So that Arifu is not the only organization creating the content, but we can take our insights on how to design digitally, put them into a platform, and then allow others to come in and help us really build a robust set of information for people to be able to access. And this is both on, I think, to the point, it's not just about training, it's about information, it's about information on products and services that people can access and how to access them safely. There's a big consumer protection element to it as well. So yeah, thanks.
So it's about how do you give people content and tools and information that they can act on as they're trying to.
And I guess that's my takeaway is like when in the beginning, we really wanted to get the approach right. And it's, doing it all with our team. I think our big takeaway is we need to understand the model that works and then help other organizations take on and help us build that library out as well.
And use that model. So as I said, let's unpack that a little bit more. A key point that you mentioned there, Marissa, is how do we really understand who we're trying to reach and what's the right set of content, tools, the right design for getting them something. So you started with the chatbot, you started with the access question, but then how do you actually get the content to be really work? And how do we get folks to trust that content? So I think we're going to start with Aspen and talk a little bit about how that process looks in practice. How do you go about doing that?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. It's a tough one. So to say that we've cracked this egg, like it's probably still a work in progress, right? This is something you learn and do on repeat, and it varies by context, it varies by segment, it varies by need. With that qualifier, we do have some good insights on this. So we've succeeded in obviously improving our engagement rates and our certification rates and learning rates over many years, and that seems to keep increasing year on year as we learn more about that specific question on trust. Actually. Is quite important. But I think trust is one of those things that gets built through experience, right? So it's, any tech company will tell you it's never the first few weeks that you're going to find the escalation. Is usually the curve that follows, right? So, what we want to do is try to make sure there's enough value being seen by learners for themselves, right? And learners being the term we use for our audience, right? And so, it is in part about behavior change, but it's also about strengthening one's ability to react to a situation, right? So we've seen results from everything from, we've got great NPS score, like 65% over 5 years, 78% just in 2020. We've got the fact that, through a few studies, we've seen like 80 to 86% of people are saying it's the first time they've ever had access to this kind of content, which is in itself validating. Now, okay, that's not enough, that's cool, but great, good, we're solving some problem here. We know from a few other measures that people are talking about it. Now, that doesn't mean that the people that they're talking to are coming out of the system, but they are telling others about what they're learning or what they've seen, right? And so on average, we've seen about an individual telling 5 other people, some from within their household, some from within the community. We don't know exactly yet, but pretty cool about word of mouth. And we do see step by step. Yeah, initially it's like 100 learners, maybe it's 200, maybe it's 250, and then step by step, it starts escalating fast. So you end up in tens of thousands pretty quickly as you keep doing that. Now we've got systems that actually help enable that. You've got reminders that are automated, that are coming into the system. You've got recommendation engines that are being built based on what other people like in their area, perhaps sometimes, what might be interesting to you. Now, these are all like, pretty cool tech-enabled things, but they're also a lot of insights that are generated through learner feedback. 2 things I would suggest. Typically, there's a classic consumer research problem. Typically, people ask, what do you think about my product? And tell me what I can do to improve it. Worth also asking, what's going on in your life and how can I help you solve that problem, right? And that's a good way to reframe how you're serving. Now, going back to the whole information and opportunities for all purpose, again, what is that information? What is that opportunity? What is that linkage? What is that service? That's how you're going to figure it out. You're not going to figure it out by, just asking an expert something. You need to ask the person who needs the service, right? Now, just beyond that, certainly on the trust component, SMS is both a really powerful vehicle. So is WhatsApp, so is IVR. But they have limitations. SMS is also a vehicle by which a lot of scam comes out, right? So there's reason for distrust. There's reason for trust, there's reason for distrust. So we're trying a few different approaches here. Of course, word of mouth is a really powerful way to build trust. People start believing when they see results. But what are results? Like, is it just me hearing from someone who I trust? That's one component of it. It could be a partner that they already work with. Maybe it's a TechnoServe, maybe it's a Hyper, maybe whoever. But it could also be someone they know and they trust, right? Who's a learner. It could also be that person who has learned on our system showing, hey, I've used this content, I've applied it to my field, come check it out. See what my crops look like. And that's a model we're trying. And that's a very low cost. So it's digital-ish, right? And people are doing this already, right? It's not that we're asking them to do anything more than they are. We know they're talking about it. We know they're showing. So how do we enable that a little bit more, inject a little bit of an incentive to do that more? So we're trying out these models and we're seeing them to be promising. We haven't scaled a lot of these yet, but they're really powerful ways to bridge that. Certainly there's mass media and other things as well, but that's expensive sometimes and not always sure if that's the right way forward. So to answer your question in short, it's a work in progress, but it is a learning process, right? it's never digital or not. It's always a question of what is the problem, how do you solve it, try a few things, get your lessons out, see where it works and why and what, take to the next step. And hopefully others do the same and do better for everyone else, all the learners out there.
Great, thank you. So Julian, I think you're gonna dig on first for TNS, but it's really interesting to think about as you've thought about building engagement and building trust, what you found that works at TechnoServe as you move to digital.
Yeah, in many ways, it's very similar to what Usman had articulated. So when we're thinking about what is actually going to drive what content we're going to use with entrepreneurs, we think about three different things. What kind of content drives impact, what we think is achievable for the entrepreneurs, and what is urgent for the entrepreneurs. So at the first level, there's a lot of different things that ultimately could drive impact, right? I think that's a pretty easy determination to make. The second level is a little bit more difficult. What could an entrepreneur with a reasonable level of effort, something that we believe, someone who's constrained by time, resources, and the delivery through digital is actually able to do over the course of a program? And then finally, and almost the most important, what is urgent? So something that is the immediate priority for the entrepreneur, where they feel like, if I do this, it's going to change my business. Because if you don't have the constellation of those three types of things that's driving the content, then we have seen a lot of entrepreneurs drop out of the program and they don't get that behavior change that we're trying to achieve. So it's really important that we look at the intersection of those 3 points. And I'll let Juan Carlos now sort of build on that.
Yeah, no, that's been a huge way to look at how we organize and design our programs, Joyce, because when you try to support entrepreneurs in the journey, launching or growing a business is such a complex task that everything can be great to have, not even nice to have, great to have. But the problem is that real entrepreneurs do not have the time to go through a whole MBA process. So figuring out what is urgent, what's immediately needed, it kind of is, for us at least, the key to build impactful and cost-effective interventions. And our in-person experience helped us figure out a lot on the what. So we knew when we started digitizing, for example, our small growing business acceleration programs or micro retailer development programs, we had years and years working with these entrepreneurs. So we knew what they needed at different stage. But that's something that's always evolving, and that's something you always need to keep in mind. One concrete example was last year with COVID. All our programs were designed to help entrepreneurs grow faster, grow farther. When the name of the game suddenly all over the world was let's survive, let's be resilient. So we had to last year basically reassess what were those urgent things that needed to be delivered during the process. So that's something very important to keep in mind that Julian mentioned. The other issue is understanding that entrepreneurs with similar business at similar stage with similar ambitions, which is a good way to segment entrepreneurs and figuring out what they need. They may belong to a similar segment, but they may be very different in their digital journey. So how you meet them, through which media, and with what point is also very, very important. So a second learning we have developed over the last few years, that as we used to segment entrepreneurs by the stage in the life cycle, maybe their sector, maybe their appetite to growth, etc. We now segment them on how what's their access to digital tools and media. So the way we approach to them is by meeting them where they are, rather than expecting them in video for example, if they do not have the internet connection that's capable of video, that's not gonna work. So having and in many cases you need to use a blend of different technologies to produce that behavioral change process that we discussed before. So that's part of the learnings that I think are very important to unpack for anyone who is interested in starting in this journey of supporting entrepreneurs through digital tools. Hope that helps you.
Yeah, no, and so interesting, you use slightly different words as both organizations talked about this, but you talked about what's urgent, and Osman talked about, what's happening in your life right now, which of course is often what's urgent, and really designing around that. I really appreciate that, talking about how a range of different technologies and approaches might be really important depending on where people are. So the last thing we wanted to dive into was just that, but it seems to be a shared approach across your two organizations, is really using evaluation as part of the process to improve your methods, to improve your content. So you're impacting the users, the learners learning. I want to talk a little bit about the evaluation work that you do. You do interviews, you do surveys. I think you've done some RCT. So how are you approaching that evaluation and learning journey from your own organization?
Sure. So no, that's a great question. And I think it's something that we grapple with again, right? When do you use what methodology for what situation in what time frame and all that? But I do want to go back to one thing I said earlier. I mean, there's something about having this information available to strengthen someone's ability to react to a situation, right? So we've got, for example, a couple of situations now where, of course, COVID is real. It's out there. It's a crisis that we're facing right now. There are other crises that have happened and will happen in the future, right? One of the things we've seen through two different measures now, one through an independent study just wrapping up with UC Berkeley, a randomized control trial on the effect of training as a response and complementing a MasterCard intervention on debt relief, in fact, MasterCard Center for Inclusive Growth intervention. We've got the preliminary results from Midline, and this will be the first time anyone's hearing it. So congratulations to all of you. And we literally just got off the call before this, and we've seen, just for like less than $1 or so, like a range of effects that can be measured depending on how you look at it, between 3 to 10% increase in revenue and profits in a crisis situation with the training program. So that to me is already like quite a powerful set of insights on certain types of information that in certain situations can be really helpful, even if in normal times maybe they're not so useful. So behavior change and outside of a crisis situation for this kind of information may not be as interesting, but in a crisis situation, it's quite powerful. Similarly, we've seen this in agriculture. We've seen the fact that, hey, let's just look at, we saw a lot of back-end engagement with data, with content that previously learners were not engaging with. When we asked them, they said basically like, well, the supply chains were blocked, so I needed to learn how to store my potatoes. And so I look at the storage content, which I'd never looked at before. And so they just use it in that moment to react and solve their problem using information that was already there. We did nothing. We sat back, we created the content some months ago, and we just let it be. Partners were financing it, it was available. It wasn't necessarily the goal of the project, but it was something that emerged from it, right? They learned how to use finance to alleviate stress as well. They browse different crop contents in case they could tap into growing something else in the particular situation. So I think those two insights are really powerful to tell a story about what's worth measuring when, right? You kind of need to be adaptive. So that's one aspect of this. Another is that Arifu's theory of change, there's many theories of change depending on the sector and how you look at it. One central bit is that we need to be focusing on creating commercial and non-commercial value for our partners to drive the sustainability and creation of this content so that it stays available, so that there's accessibility, accessibility and relevance to learners in there, right? So applying our design and everything. Now, in that world, we've got some results too. In fact, again, with MasterCard Center for Inclusive Growth, we should just keep working together on these things. But essentially, like what we've seen over there is there's this Jazaduka loan product. We basically provided general financial education on safe borrowing and things like that. Marissa can speak a lot more in depth to that if ever needed, but also about how that product works. And what we've seen, and this is a matching method study, it's causal in nature, as far as I would say. We matched basically merchants who had historical transaction behaviors that were basically the same and compared them when we showed up. So based on that, Hi, am I still there? But power just went out again.
Yeah.
This is good. This is just part of the show, right? So,
Yeah.
So what we saw actually is that with Arifu's content, we saw increased borrowing, but also increased payment incidents. We saw people like paying back their loans more, but also the value of those payments was increasing. So borrowing increased by about 15%. Interest rates increased by proportionately 14% as well. We saw payment incidence rates, like how frequently you saw credit into the loan account, by 10%. We saw the payment value on average increase by 24%. We saw people who engaged deeper with the content do a lot more of this. So it's slightly better performance for those who went further. That's really promising. We further saw in the same data post-COVID that people who learned with Arifu drew down their debt much faster. They were like, let's just bring down interest levels to what we can manage. Let's have less debt. Let's try to manage. And that's it. We're looking at back-end data. We didn't, in this situation, we couldn't really ask them. We're not in that situation, but we've got 3-4 different data points here to sort of validate that. So we know we're creating commercial value. We also know that there is increased production in potatoes. We've got one study that's showing about 10 sacks of potatoes increase for farmers on average. Others are showing self-reported improvements in quality of life. This is all 60 decibels independent results. And also, that's also paired with, okay, we don't want people to use too many inputs such that they're over fertilizing or whatever, but they are increasing their input purchases too. So there's a commercial value proposition here too. A lot of this generates insights, right? But you asked about like, what are the KPIs? So it depends. And it depends how you measure the KPIs in what context. And I think that's the key point I want to make. The methodology matters, the question matters, how you approach the problem matters, and then understanding how you want to communicate this to partners, because it's great to have results, but if no one understands them, maybe there's no point to having them either. So want to share that here. I want to make sure people understand them, and we want to work together to see if we can drive these and learn more as well. So I'll pause there.
Great. So I think, Julian, you're gonna, oh no, Juan Carlos, are you starting off? The answer to this question? Okay. Tell us how you're thinking about evaluation to understand your impact.
Well, I mean, we are an organization that has been historically committed to measuring and learning and continuous improvement. So that's at the core of the equation. At the very beginning, we wonder whether we should. I mean, our hypothesis, yeah, we can reduce cost and increase scale and learn more, but do we need to accept a reduction in impact because of this intervention moving to a digital platform versus a face-to-face? And on one side, for our acceleration or now survival programs, that are targeted to people that are willing to immerse themselves in a full program, that they find that this is what they need, that this is the process they want to go to take their business to the next level. Actually, our early internal evaluation suggests that this can be actually accomplished we can accomplish the same level of impact that we used to have at a fraction of the cost. So that's a very interesting emerging hypothesis that we're now testing with Professor Steven Anderson from Stanford at scale in our Central American Small Growing Business Acceleration Program. So I hope we can talk again in a few months with those results, but we're pretty optimistic about what can be accomplished to digital tools. At the same time, we recognize that there is a universe of entrepreneurs that are not at their point in their careers where they want to go to a full acceleration package and a full engagement with a program that requires intensive learning and intensive advising and mentoring and support, whose results are pretty encouraging, but maybe you just need to learn a little bit of this or get fast advice on a particular topic. So, and those digital tools allow us to also reach at a way broader universe that we want to start, for which we want to start developing products and services and start measuring how that goes. So the measurement is pretty embedded in how we do things, and is something that we really pay attention. Always looking at the effectiveness and the cost of that. Julian has been working in some very interesting research as well on this side of things. Julian, I don't know if you want to comment on that.
Yeah, I think that, very much the M&E that we have is used in terms of research in order to study impact, but it also, I think, has a really important part or role to play in improving the programs. And so I think, the pandemic has really forced us to reevaluate the way that we've been doing things, and not just, sort of the normal course of business. And we've really been, in terms of digital capacity building, thinking about rapid design, and having a robust M&E program is something that enables sort of a more adaptive management structure, where teams are able to more easily continuously learn and improve. And so I think we try to ground ourselves in really focusing on what the evidence is on the ground. And so you're thinking about data that's coming from participants themselves, such as like feedback surveys or M&E, data that's coming from the training. And obviously, it's much easier to examine things like engagement metrics when you have all of this embedded in a digital platform.
Mhm.
And then thinking about data that's coming from third parties and feedback from your own team. And so on the basis of that, that's a much shorter feedback loop than I think in our traditional programs. And so it enables you to really refine the design very quickly, and then create very inexpensive pilots and just do like A/B testing and see what is more engaging for people, what is producing higher impact. And I think that was not something necessarily that we had fully embedded in our programs before, but it's something that we've really tried to lean into. And so hopefully our programs are improving as a result of being able to access this information.
And can I just ask you a quick follow-up question? Because I'm also wondering whether you've also looked at the question of corporate impact and what this means for your partners, because you're head of strategic initiatives and that's your role. So have you also used some of that research to talk back to that, to give them feedback in the way that
I think that corporations in general are under a lot of scrutiny from consumers, public sector, and they need to have hard data that you can really back up in order to make the claims that they make. And we work with a lot of very high profile companies that want to have rigor behind the claims they're making. And so it's really important that you have an M&E program that can, from the outset, produce the kind of data that they want, so they can say, we trained this many entrepreneurs, it produced this type of impact, either in revenues or profitability or volume of goods sold. And without having something that really goes to the level of each individual entrepreneur, they're not able to make those claims. So it's something I think that really distinguishes this kind of training.
Great, well, thank you. Well, we're at time for today. So I want to thank all of you. This has been a really interesting conversation, lots of shared learnings. So we really appreciate your taking the time to be with us today. We've, just so folks know, folks who are listening, this is again the launching pad for our conversation on this topic, and we will follow up with 2 virtual but live conversations, hoping that TechnoServe and Arifu can join us for some of those as well. The dates are May 18th and 20th, and folks who are watching this should have received an email about how to connect to that, but if not, you can reach out to us via email to Rosana Espinosa at aspeninstitute.org. And again, thank you. We're looking forward to more conversation about this really important topic. So thanks again to everyone for joining us today.